Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking to Suzanne Renee. Welcome, Suzanne. Super excited to have you on the show.
Hi, very nice to be here.
So before we hit record, we were just discussing how that first question that we always ask is super hard. So I'm going to ask the super hard question, get it out of the way. Tell me about yourself.
Absolutely. So I have been living in various cities throughout the past, I would say 7 years, from Miami to DC to New York. And then after the pandemic, I came down to be with family in Florida. I've always been into reading and writing. It's kind of been my just way of connecting to myself and kind of connecting to the world. And, that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about is getting more involved and connecting with people who have the same passions about their way of really understanding people's journeys. I think when you hear somebody else's story, you realize that you're not the only one experiencing everything that you experience in life.
That is so true. And I have to ask, are those turtles on your earring?
They are. Yes,
They
absolutely.
are awesome. I love them.
Thank you. They were one of my first pets. I went to a pet store and I said, what should I get? And for some reason, the turtles was just drew me to them. And I had 3 turtles for many years. They're a lot of fun. Thinking of names for them and everything like that.
Yeah. So do you have any pets now?
I do. I have 2 cats, which one we actually found in a bumper, a friend's car, and she was calling for help. And then we found her a few weeks ago. So she's my newest baby. She's only 2 months, so she's a little baby.
Aww.
But yes, they're my everything. As many people know, you come in, they just give you all the love in the world. So
yeah,
very lucky.
Yeah, exactly. I love cats. Well, we've got cats, we've got dogs. And actually today, for those who are watching the show, you'll notice that my background is different because I'm actually in my living room. My kid actually went to school today. And so I have my puppies beside me.
Oh, so, much better than kids.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, but I still have my phone there in case the kid calls and says, I got to come home early. Hope not. So let's jump into it and talk about what mental health that you have struggled with.
Absolutely. So, it's funny because often when you're struggling, you just think it's kind of part of you. I didn't realize for a very, very long time that I even was struggling with depression. I just thought that's just how I was. And it wasn't until later that I realized that it wasn't just something that I was and that's how I was, but I actually, once managing it, I actually could have kind of end up becoming a different person. So for many years, I probably since I was a kid, honestly, I struggled with different kinds of depression. But what's interesting is what kind of how I dealt with it is I've actually discovered recently, it's called toxic positivity. And instead of how we think of a depression of someone just lying in bed and crying and never wanting to do anything, I was the opposite. I tried so hard to combat the depression with being so positive and happy all the time that it meant I didn't let myself feel anything that was like sad or hard. I was just like, that's it. I'm going to go make lemonade out of lemons. I'm going to go like take a walk and I'm going to go travel and all these things. But I never let myself slow down to actually deal with the feelings. And the depression actually got worse. They called it, I was diagnosed with reoccurring depression, which means that it kind of different incidents in life kind of, continue it there. With that, there was some, anxiety kind of coupled with it as well, which is many people who deal with both know is the worst combination that you're, stressing about what you're not feeling great about. And then after a few different incidents in my life, I had PTSD, didn't realize I had PTSD. And very much, so much has progressed in the world of mental health. This was back in about 2007, 2008, where it was better than maybe 50 years ago, but you didn't see TV shows with therapists on them. You didn't have, you weren't at dinner with a friend and they'd said, oh yeah, I talked to my therapist about this and that. It was very much people went and didn't tell anybody that they were going to therapy. So I think that was, one of the painful things that I, was waking up in the middle of the night with nightmares. And I figured, oh, it's just probably how my brain deals with the stress of my work day. And, a lot that now looking back, the signs were there, but I never put myself in the category of struggling with anything with mental health until I realized that was what was going on.
Okay. So a couple of key points that we're going to explore a little bit more. We're going to start with way back at the beginning of your answer where you talked about the toxic positivity. And you did explain it, which is fabulous. But I wanted to point out that so many people who don't struggle with their mental health, that is their answer. Oh, just think positive. It's fine. Just think positive. But as you just explained, it kind of swings you totally in the opposite direction, because then you're using it as a negative coping skill, really, by not letting yourself feel the feelings that are there, like you were saying. And that is so important to recognize, is that when we are going through sadness or whatever, and I mean, when I have depression, I feel nothing really. But when the sadness emotions come up, instead of trying to shove them aside, it is important to deal with them, like you said. So that is such a good point. Nobody on the show has mentioned that yet. So I really wanted to take a moment and point it out a little bit more, because that is a lot of people's answers. Just think positive.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the hardest things from talking to my friends and family, that they sometimes they want to support you and they want to help you and they just don't know how. But you know, if you're always the positive, smiling, I mean, my friends were like shocked when they found out a lot of this, because I was always like the social butterfly and the person making all the plans. And so it was, once I actually was vulnerable and I let them know what was going on, and I let myself, you know, feel, even if it was scary, I let myself feel some of those things that were really challenging to process. Everyone was like there for me. But if you're trying so hard to be happy and positive, it's also a way of keeping people at bay so they don't pick up on what's going on. And it's harder to let people help you because they think that that person's happy. Why are they ever going to like need any help? And we look at people like Anthony Bourdain and Robin Williams, and that was exactly how they coped. Everyone in their life thought they were these happy people that had everything, you know, possible.
Yeah, that's such another really good point, is that when we mask what we're feeling so that other people don't have to deal with it, or we don't have to listen to what they're going to tell us. That's another really negative coping strategy. And actually, when I first started my TikTok, so for those who haven't followed TikTok, Ride or Die Show, but one of the first TikToks that I made on it was telling people, it was a challenge I was issuing, really, and saying to them, next time somebody says, "How are you?" don't say fine if you're not fine.
Yep.
That is something that a lot of people, it's the default. Oh, I'm fine. Whether it's because you don't think that they actually want the answer or you don't want to give them the answer, that's the default. And if you're not fine, then don't say you're fine. You can't expect somebody to be a mind reader and realize that what you're saying is not what you're feeling. And then the other interesting point that you brought up, well, you brought up a bunch, but the other one that I want to talk about is around how you said, I didn't know I was struggling because I just thought that's how I was. And I think for a lot of us, that is the case, is it is our normal. And that's why I hate the word normal, because normal is individual to each person. Normal is what you experience on a day-to-day basis. It is normal for you, but it isn't something that we should have to live with. It shouldn't be our normal, but it has become it because we're so used to it.
That's like you almost play a character. And what you were saying before about the "how are you" question, whenever I speak about as a person who dealt with it, but also from having lost friends myself, as a person who doesn't always know how to support the people. So I always kind of talk on both things. That they say, instead of asking a question to a friend of "how are you," because they're going to be like, "I'm fine, I'm good," that it's important to ask the question of "are you okay?" And they've done a lot of research on suicide hotlines and stuff, and people have a lot harder time lying about "are you okay?" than "how are you?" Because if someone just says to you, "are you okay?" and they're like, "Yeah, I'm okay," and they ask it again, the person will actually say, like, and actually in Australia, they have a "are you okay" day, where they actually have a point of going to people in their life and just asking them the question, "are you okay?" And it's amazing how much people will be like, "I'm not." Actually, I'm not. And you'd think people could lie about that, but it's really hard. If someone asks you a few times, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? Are you okay?" You end up opening up. So that's if you want to really be able to support other people in your lives and you're not sure what's going on with them, but like you kind of have a vibe kind of things, ask them the question, are you okay? Most likely, even maybe at once they might kind of lie to you, but if you keep asking, they're eventually going to say, actually, I'm not okay. Like this is going on, that's going on. And that's one of my things I like find so inspiring, what a difference that one question can make.
That is really good to know, because yeah, the how are you is just it becomes part of our hi. It's hi, how are you? But
you go to the grocery store, you go to the bank, how are you?
Yeah, exactly. But are you okay? I like that. I'm going to try and consciously use that when I'm talking to people now. Is are you okay? That's awesome. And okay, so let's now talk more about the nightmares. Because you're like, I didn't recognize myself as having somebody who is struggling, and yet you're waking up with nightmares. So just, I don't know, wherever you think is the right start of that. Well, how did the nightmares come about? How long did they last? Like whatever you think is relevant.
Absolutely. So in 2008, I was sexually assaulted, and again, my way is my coping mechanism is like, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm going to go focus on my life. I'm going to have great friends. I'm not going to let this person ruin my life, was my whole mentality. That it was like, if I actually spend time like dealing with this or taking this person to court or anything like that, it gives them way too much power. So I need to just like get past this.
Okay.
And,
so hold on. I'm going to interrupt because that is kind of a double-edged sword, I feel like. And I want to explore that just a little bit more so people can understand how I heard it anyways. I mean, other people might have heard it different. But when you're saying, I'm not going to let this person have power over me, I'm going to live my life, that is a good thought, right? Like that is not a bad thing all into itself. That right there is a really important and helpful thought, if it is followed up with the right kind of help, so that you're not giving them power. And I think this is where you diverged from the, I don't want to say correct path, but the more helpful path. Right. So if I'm saying I'm not giving this person power over me, then I still want to live my life. I still want to be my awesome self. Going and seeking the correct help and therapy and dealing with those issues isn't actually giving them power. So I just want the audience to know that it's not actually giving them power. It's taking your power back. But it can very much, like you were just about to explain till I very rudely interrupted you. It's sometimes it's hard in our mind to think, if I go and I talk about the situation or that person or whatever, I'm giving them power because I'm giving them so much of my time and energy. But it's not. It's a way of taking it back. So I just wanted to point that out, because I think it's a really important kind of double-edged sword, because it's hard to deal with those thoughts that we're thinking about. I don't want to give them power. I want to live my life, but then how do I live my life and not give them power if I don't deal with it? Like it's a lot.
And then that's pretty much what was going on, exactly that, like in my mind. I think the whole thing also was that, when I did report it, and I did go to the police, and the policeman said to me, he said, I was living in Miami at the time, and he said, this happens all the time. You don't really remember those details. He said, most likely, he said, and I think he was trying to comfort me that it happens all the time, that I wasn't alone. But instead, to me, it came across like, if it happens all the time, why should I even bother like talking about it to people? And then I went and told my boss to try to go back to work, and then I just was having a hard time and started crying. And I told her, and she was kind of like, well, did it happen here? And I was like, no. And she goes, okay, well, do you want to stay or do you want to go home? And I was like, well, I don't want to go home, because then I feel like I'm being like rejected. And I was working at a hotel. I said, maybe if I stay, I can help other people. And, let's say, so I think also it's, they say the first person that responds to you, that's often, if people choose to seek help or not, it's how that first person that you told responded to, which is a huge responsibility if someone does tell you that, you handled them in the right way. But I think after those two, it was kind of like, what, nobody really cares about what happened to me anyway. Let me just like, move on. The big thing, like you mentioned, I realize, is when things happen in your life, whether it be that or losing somebody you love or whatever else, that's a huge thing for me, is taking the time to accept it and give it its time that it deserves, because it is a big thing. And if you have to take a few days off of work to deal with it or whatever else, like that's a huge empowerment to say, I matter enough to spend a few days processing this. But how I was feeling, it was like, if I don't want to accept this happen. So I was, the more that I deny it, the more it won't have happened. And I can pretend it never happened. And most people in my life, my friends, didn't really know what happened, because I didn't tell a lot of people. So it was like, I'd be with people and they would have no idea. And I look at pictures like 2 or 3 weeks after, and I'm out at a bar hanging out with friends, and it's like, how did that happen? I went from that something that dramatic to hanging out with my friends at a bar like nothing happened, not even telling them. But I completely, like you were saying with masking, I completely created this version of myself that was somebody this hadn't happened to, and
Yeah.
that other person that did can kind of go, over there. And they gave me like a pamphlet afterwards. They were like, oh, here, here's help. Here's a pamphlet. And it's like, now of course, I was 26 at the time. So now that I'm older, I can look back and be like, wow, if something like that happened now, I think I would have gotten the help and all that kind of stuff. But at the time, it was just like,
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not dealing with it.
Like you were saying, those first couple of people didn't, and from their perspective, maybe they thought they were helping, maybe they thought they were giving you the right support, because it's hard. It's a hard situation, right? But what you're receiving isn't that message that they think they're sending.
Exactly.
And so it can be even harder to go about what you have to do after that when you think it's been minimized. And actually, I just did an interview, and it will be posted before yours is posted. Because guys, I record and then I post like weeks later. But it's the episode with the author that wrote Unreported. And I want to make sure to mention that book because it is about sexual assault and how a lot of people don't report it because of this stigma and that you're describing of people just kind of brushing it off. And so she was giving some statistics, and the one that really stuck out in my brain is one in this sexual assault or sexual harassment, I can't remember exactly which word she used, happens to 1 in 5 women. So yeah, it is a normal thing. But like I said, what is normal? Normal is just something that we've accepted that happens on a regular basis. Normal does not mean that it is supposed to happen or that it should happen. It is something that we as society have accepted that it does happen.
Yeah.
So 1 in 5, like that is a staggering figure of people who are being assaulted and not receiving the support from society that they need, because it should not be 1 in 5. I mean, really, I would love to see it 0, but it should not be 1 in 5. That is insane to me.
And that's one of the things that I have an issue with is this whole concept of self-help. So what I've kind of created is like community help. It shouldn't be like, oh, you should go help, you should go see somebody when the person's like just trying to get through the day. Sometimes you need to be able to say, hey, do you want me to come with you? I can wait in the waiting room. Do you want me to come with you for your therapist appointment? And really taking that idea of community help. Yes. That's why this whole idea of self-help, it's kind of like you should help yourself. But only we really, I feel like, can break through this is by helping each other. That's really like, and that's why in the book, I know a lot of people kind of shied away from really talking about the details of those kind of things, but I was inspired by the Brock Turner, how she really went into like, how she really went into detail. And I was like, I'm not going to hold back, because it's someone who's going to read this that's going to say, hey, like this happened to me, and like someone else understands like what it was like for me. And that's really what it's about, is other people saying, what I went through, it wasn't just me. Like how, I wasn't the only person that experienced this. A lot of people experience, and this doesn't make it okay, but at least it makes you feel less isolated from other people, because you feel like I was like, I can't tell my friends, they're not going to understand, they don't know about it. And I talked to people, and then more and more people I talked about, more women were like, maybe not that exact, but like, yeah, I was walking down the street or I was at work, and it's just like
1 in 5.
It kind of was like, whoa, really? Like, once you realize that, then you're able to really break out of the stigma a little bit.
Yeah. When you're saying that, I'm picturing just everybody kind of rising up, raising their voices, like having this collective voice of it has happened and we don't need to be silenced anymore. That's what I'm imagining in my head.
And a lot of that, with Me Too has kind of come out in the past few years.
Yes.
And while I'm like really excited about the progress, part of me is just like, this is the world. Years ago, but I have a niece who's 18. I'm like, maybe at least she'll grow up in a different world because of the things we went through that people now are starting to speak up about. And,
Exactly.
I think that generation is very much about speaking their minds with, TikTok or whatever it is, which is, something to feel good about, that there is some progress in that. But I realized you were asking me before the nightmares, we went in a whole other direction, but.
Hey, I told you at the beginning, laid back conversation. We see where it goes. But yeah, let's talk about these nightmares.
And so pretty much like after that happened, I kept trying, I went to work, I lived my normal life. Anyone who saw me would be like, oh, she's just living her life. But I kept kept like waking up in the middle of the night, just like in sweats kind of thing. And so what does someone do? I went to Google and I said, Google, why am I having nightmares? And Google pretty much said that your brain works out whatever you don't work out during the day, your brain works out at night. And so it said if you have a stress at your job, then you're probably trying to work that out when you sleep. So I put the two and two together. I was working in a very busy, hotel downtown Miami. And I said, I'm just stressed at work. It's a busy day. My mind's just trying. So my nightmares weren't about what happened. My nightmares actually were about yes yelling at me. And what they say happens a lot of times is that you recreate the feelings that you had during that kind of an incident. I mean, your mind might have shut off what happened, but it's actually, you start to feel that in your life. And I started to feel that way with my boss, that she was like, dominating me and not listening to me and telling me what to do. And I would try to speak and she would cut me off and things like that. So it was like what happened there, I was recreating in my work relationship, and I didn't leave the job even though I had that relationship because I was so used to replaying that same situation. And then I started to learn how to calm myself down from the nightmares. I'd wake up in the middle of the morning. I would tell myself it's okay, that wasn't real. And I would collect onto something, I put something wet on my face, and then I would get through the day. And it got to the point, and then like I had a lot of stomach issues. Like I would have a salad, my stomach would just like be killing me, and it was just like, again, I went to the doctor, and it's like I think I should try to do my due diligence, and the doctor was like, oh, it's just stress. And I was like, can I do anything about that? And like, I feel like these days, at least when you go to a doctor, they have you do your mental health information as well. But back then it was just physical. And he was like, I don't see anything physically. You're fine. You're a young girl that's stressed about her job. Good luck. And I was just dismissed.
I'm not going to say he was entirely wrong. You were stressed, but you were stressed because of this awful situation that happened to you.
Yeah, and I would have appreciated with that he at least offered to me, like, you seem like you're really stressed. Maybe you want to talk to, a therapist, or just give me some alternatives rather than just kind of like downplaying me. And he was just kind of like, well, it's just stress. Like, I got to go to the next patient. And I was left there saying, and I called my mom right away, and she said, stress, every job has stress. And I said, she's right. And then I just went back into my world, not thinking, like you said, that it was beyond that. And I think that happens often when people are dealing with stuff that they don't examine. It could be something bigger than just, oh, I get headaches or whatever else. Like the body really does respond, because since I started, getting help and really focusing on myself and like, giving up like what happened was anything to do with me. Like my stomach problems are like once a year. And so there's definitely a direct correlation between those kind of things. But a lot of times the physical ailments, we just kind of accept that the doctor says it's nothing. And we don't say, what, there is something because it's my body and this, is it normal?
Well, yeah, because stress and mental health all can have effects on our physical body.
Yeah.
And we're finally realizing that. People are finally doing research and going, yes, when somebody is, whether it's stress or an actual mental health issue, it actually physically affects us and can give us aches and pains and stomach aches and headaches and whatever.
And I think that's the thing that I encourage people to not just dismiss stuff. If there's something that is going on with you, don't just dismiss it up. Like, that's how I am. Like, I looked it up and it said Virgos processing through their stomachs. So I was like, okay, I'm a Virgo. No wonder I have stomach issues. A lot of times the internet gives us the easy answer and we just accept those answers, or we're like, it's not a big deal. I've had headaches for 10 years. And then you actually really look into it and it is something, bigger, or even just something like, when I wake up in the morning, I just kind of feel like I don't want to get out of bed. And it's like, you think that's who you are. I promise you, now I'm realizing, I'm like, that's not who I was. Like, I would be losing my keys like every day. And I was like, that's just how I am. I lose things. I'm forgetful. And then that's what happens with kids. The parents just say, oh, he's just forgetful.
Yeah.
But it could be something bigger than that. And when you really, not that you should be questioning every little thing in your life, but if there's something that's repeatedly interrupting the quality of life you have, then that's something we'll get into.
Yeah.
Because it's like, why is this having this big of an impact on my life? Like, I would be late to hanging out with friends because I couldn't find my keys. Like, that's not okay.
Yeah. So, okay. So you had nightmares. You're trying to ignore everything. You finally realized that you needed help. What happened then when you finally realized it? Where did you go for help?
So, because of everything, I lost my job. And again, I said, I'm going to go take a trip and, and get away. But that ended up being the worst thing, because I was in Asia and Europe all by myself for like 4 months. And everything just kind of like hit me because I wasn't running around busy anymore. And like, it just really hit me. Like one night as time went on, it got like worse and worse. And like my friends were like, you need to come home. They were like if you travel again, you need to come home. And it was the hardest thing for me that 4 months, who knows when I'll have this again in my life, but I knew that like I wouldn't be able to make it to the next country. So I came back home, and I was like, I just need to be home. I'll be fine. Be home, be with my house, and all that kind of stuff. And it worked for like a day or two, but then again, I just started to really feel like I couldn't I couldn't sleep. I couldn't get out of bed. I thought maybe because the time changed, but I really, like, I started to feel scared. And then my one day everybody like went out, and I was just sitting there with like my cat, and I went to the bathroom, and I started thinking about like maybe I should drink bleach. Like it wasn't like a conscious thought. Like I felt like, and so I said to myself, I just need to keep petting the cat. Like my mind was in survival, but it was like, if I could just keep doing that. Like you were talking about animals before, that, like, it's funny because this cat hated to be like picked up or like stay anywhere, but it could read me and like knew. And then I went on Facebook, and I just started writing people random stuff, and my friends picked up that what I was writing didn't make any sense, and that wasn't my normal self. So they reached a bunch of them. Luckily they are social workers and therapists, and so they kind of knew something was going on. And they reached out to my mom, who I was living with, and they said to her, you need to like take her in. And at first, my mom was like, no, it's fine, she's fine. But like they kept calling, like 3 or 4 friends kind of split up, and they were like, this isn't like a conversation, like you have to take her. And she of course kind of justified that, I just came back from this trip and whatever else, especially as that generation, I feel like more does, that it doesn't really understand the mental health the kind of way that we do. And then I went to hospital, the emergency room. They hospitalized me and in an inpatient facility for about 3 days. I got on some medication from there, started seeing the psychiatrist on a normal basis, until finally they said, I think you're okay to go home, but you of course still need to get a therapist. You still need to do something here in order to continue growth. But for me, like not being able to access like my niece or like anyone in my life was like, for me, was like the wake up call I needed, because I realized how much I went from thinking I didn't want any of these things and I didn't want to like, live anymore, to realizing how much I really loved all those things in my life, and I didn't want to give them up.
That's such a good point, because when we're because I've been in what I'm looking for. I've been in the mindset of I should just not be here anymore. I should just go. But eventually, when you find just even one thing to hold on to, like you said, seeing your nieces, that kind of gives us like an anchor to stay. Doesn't make it easier, because you still have to navigate how you're going to stay, but it gives you a reason to stay. And that means a lot to people, is finding that reason. So, my reason was I had a kid, and my reason was I didn't want to leave my husband to have to raise him by himself. So finding that reason is really important.
And I just kept I had a little picture of her, like her school picture. I kept that with me in the hospital, and that was like my thing, because we did lose my older brother to suicide, and that was my thing. Like you said, I said I can't do this to her again. Like she already lost, a relative. She was 2 at the time, but I'm like, she already lost someone. I was like, I can't do this to her again. Like I have to find a way. I don't know what the way is, like you said, but I said I had to figure out a way, because like and even today she's still my like on my darkest days, whatever. She's still what I reach out to like feel like there's something else, out there. And just the way that she sees me, like, and she knows, like now she's older, she's 18, like she has a lot of friends in high school that had dealt with depression, and she understands now. And sometimes she'll just give me a hug, and like, I may not be able to feel the hug in the moment, but like, I know that she's there, and her presence makes that difference. And I think that's the hard thing, is when you start to feel that way, you don't feel that, you start to feel numb to everything. But yeah, if you can just find something to be like, I need to be able to do this for them,
we both talked about people as our anchor, but it doesn't have to be a person. I want people to understand that it doesn't have to be an actual person. It could be, we talked about pets. It could be that you have a pet that needs to be fed, right? Especially if, like, for us, we have 4 cats and 2 dogs. Well, if I was to not be here anymore and say nobody else in my house was for whatever reason, my animals would be all split up. Who would take 6 animals? Right? Like, and that again is another anchor, because that's not fair to them. I don't want to do that to them. They all love each other. They're a little animal family. So it doesn't have to be a person. It can be a pet that you think needs a certain kind of loving and nobody else can give it to them. So you need to be there to walk them, to feed them. You don't want them to be split up. There's lots of different reasons. You just have to find what is your reason.
Absolutely, because that makes all all the difference. That and that's thing. Now before I go to bed, I really try to, even if I have a terrible day, I really try to practice gratitude. And with that, I'm like, what, a terrible day, but what, I'm really like so like appreciative for my pets, or just even just like in nature too. For me is huge. Just being like, what, like this place in the world, like when I'm there, I feel like we're connected to this lake, and the lake needs me as much as I need the lake. Sometimes it's just like a nature kind of a connection, just being able to feel some kind of emotion towards something, even if it's not your normal emotion, I think does make a big difference. And so I went to a few different therapists right after, and I just I was not feeling the connection. They were watching the clock. Like I just, I wasn't, and like what I've learned since then is that you can't just see 1 or 2 therapists. Sometimes it's hard, but you have to see 5 or 10 to find somebody that really connects in a way with you there. But then I did do some a friend had invited me to a course through Landmark Education that does that kind of transformational learning, where they don't talk, they more it's more about kind of the group sharing. And I'd get up in front of the room, or somebody else would share a story, and a mother would share about her losing her son in a car accident, and I just felt so much for her and felt so connected to her and understood everything that she went through, that it kind of made me feel a little better about what I went through, that someone else had gone through all those emotions and all those questions to be here and all those kind of things. And throughout, they kind of gave us different tools or distinctions of things to use when you're in that those moments. And then from there, that was like a 3-day weekend kind of thing. I moved to DC just from doing that for a few days. I don't know, for me that really worked well. But then when I got to DC, I was paired with like a Department of Health, whatever, and I met an amazing therapist who she was just incredible, and her and I just synced up. And then by the end of working with her for 3 years, I moved to Boston. I got a promotion, which was huge because I had been looking to get promoted and move up for 8 years when I was depressed in Miami, and I was just so stuck that I couldn't even apply for another job. And then since then, I realized that it's something that I actually really, really enjoy, the personal development. I've done Tony Robbins courses. I'm a junkie for that. So some people spend money on clothes or shoes. For me, anything that I could really explore myself, because it used to be scary exploring myself, because I kind of felt that I was going to find all these things that was wrong with me and whatever else. But I actually find that there's so many things that I understand now, why I am this way with rejection, because stuff from years ago, and I can really see the reason why. And it's that it's not, again, just who I am, that there's a reason why, because we're all born and none of these, we're not the way our personality and isn't how it is now. There's things in life
kind of a blank slate, right?
and
we're
it's
a blank slate, and life happens to us, and
a lot of times it's the interpretation we put on, I talk about in the book, how maybe when you were younger, your mom ran to make dinner and didn't say how was your day or whatever, and then you took it that people didn't care about your day. So now when your boss is rushing past you because he's busy, suddenly you're like, oh, my boss doesn't care about me. But you're really reliving stuff from years ago over and over again, until you're able to realize what's causing that. And I think it's so powerful, those moments when you're like, whoa, that makes so much sense, because then you have a choice, and then you could do something different in the moment.
Yeah, that is fabulous advice, because it is. The things that we do now have been ingrained in us from situations from before in our lives. That is how we become who we are. And the key point, though, is that you don't have to stay that way. Right? Like you're talking about, as you do this personal development, as you look at yourself, working with a therapist, however it is that you go about finding these things about yourself, you can then, if you don't like that trait about you, if you don't like thinking your boss is just ignoring you as they rush past you, instead of thinking, oh, they're really busy, they're late to a meeting, you can take steps to change that. That's what therapy is all about.
Absolutely. And I can't even imagine my life. And what's really great also, I think is important, is through doing those kind of things, you surround yourself with a new community. Sometimes the community that you surround yourself by, currently isn't always, they'll sit there at brunch and like you'll all complain about the same thing together, right? If you're able to find even just one person in your life that's of that kind of level too, that also wants to grow themselves. When I have those days and I'm kind of just stuck, I'll call like one of my best friends and be like, whatever, and they're like, no, I totally get it, but what can we do to kind of like get out of this? I think it's really important to have those people in your life that don't just allow you just to accept what is as is, but instead find ways to make decisions, or to, oh, okay, you hate your job, instead of sitting there complaining about it, like, what are some things you can do in this job? Can you talk to your boss? Can you, go for a different company, whatever it is. So often when it's, we are feeling that way, we attract similar people that are also not feeling great about life.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't help anything.
No, not at all. So you've talked a lot about some various coping strategies that you've used. You've talked about, you did go to therapy and you eventually found a really good one. You talked about just talking to your friends. You talked about the gratitude and personal development. Is there any other big coping strategy that you have found that really works for you?
I think probably the biggest is the way that I speak to myself. They say a lot of times that the way that we speak to ourselves is the way that someone in our life, parent, teacher, whoever else, spoke to us years ago, and we think that's our voice. Yeah. And I was very hard on myself. I always thought I had to be, I was the only one of 4 kids that went away to, school, to college for 4 years and things like that. But for a very long time, which, we talk about in the family now, and I'm like, I don't know why I felt like I had to be that person, but I created this identity that I had to be like the golden child. Like if I had an A- instead of an A, I was like mad for a week. And I was just really, and it's like you get really hard on yourself. And that's the funny thing, because you tell a friend and they're like, oh, you did a good job. But the way that you speak to yourself is huge on everything. And there's so many times that instead of me being like, oh, I can't believe you're, 15 minutes late for the meeting. What's wrong with you? How could you do that? You're never going to amount to anything, but you're 15 minutes late to a meeting. Instead, I've learned to speak to myself in a kind of way of, and with therapy, I did a lot of like CBT, which does a lot of like with the emotional managing. And one of the things I really realized was I'm so good to my friends, and the way that I speak to them, whatever happens to them, I'm so forgiving, I'm so understanding, and trying to apply that a little bit more to myself and realize it's okay not to be perfect. Like you said, there's no normal, there's also no perfect. So it's, there's days where I don't get everything done I want to get done. And I say, you know what, I'm going to acknowledge myself. And that's the thing too, but like I call it self-celebration, but like acknowledging yourself for what you have done today. Like, I didn't get everything I got done today, but like I got to have this lovely conversation with you, and I'll go take a walk later, and maybe some things will have to wait till tomorrow, but like tomorrow's another day. It's okay if it has to wait. I used to stay up till 4 a.m. trying to get everything done because I had to get it done that day, because otherwise there'd be something wrong with me. So I think that's the first thing I always tell people to look at is, what are you saying to yourself? When you actually really listen to it, now I pick it up with others. When I hear somebody say to somebody else, like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Like, it really gets me when I hear them say that to themselves. They might just be kidding, but when they say it to themselves, like, I'm like, no, you're not. You're, so I even catch other people's now, but if you're able to catch yours first, even I challenge people to do it for like 2 hours. Just observe the thoughts you have in your head. And then you're like, wow, like, why am I so mean to myself? Like,
it is so true. So when I was an employment counselor, I had a client who had a lot of negative self-talk. And I actually told him on a piece of paper, every time that you have a negative self-talk, you hear that, write it down. And then, so he did, and he came in. He definitely didn't write out all of it. And he told me, he's like, oh, there was too much to write. I go, okay. And we actually went through each of the things. And I said, okay, so you tell me why this is true. And so things would be like, nobody wants to hire me. I said, okay, well, tell me why this is true. And he's like, I can't. Okay, so that's not true. So let's cross that off. All right, so you can't say that to yourself anymore because you just told me it's not true. All right, so what's the next one? Oh, the next one is something about I'm bad with money. Okay, why is that true? Well, where is your evidence? Well, I don't have any. Okay, so that one's not true, right? Like, and just realizing, and I did that exercise with my therapist, was I would say things and all my negative self-talk, and I go, there was this one situation in particular I talked to her about. And I was working with somebody who at the time I was like, I got to drop my hours down. Like, this is going to be, I can't do it. I was freaking out. I couldn't do the amount of hours and I needed to cut back. And I thought that this person was going to absolutely hate me if I talked to them about it. And so my therapist was like, okay, so why do you think that? I go, well, because like, I'm going to be letting them down. Okay. Well, you said that you've known this person for like, I don't even remember, like 5 years or something. Oh, yeah. Have they ever given you any indication that they would be upset with you? No. Have they, do they know the situation going on in your life? Yes. So do you think that they would be understanding of the situation? Yes. Well, then why do you think that they're going to not be mad at you for saying this? Okay, well, I have no evidence. I just am saying these mean things to myself with absolutely no evidence and absolutely no proof. So I guess it's all lies.
And what I, love about that reminds me of something when I first started working with that, the therapist after all that happened, I came in very like nobody can help me, like, this is just how I am kind of thing. And she said, all we're really going to be doing here is rewiring your brain. And I'm just a very visual person. So I really like this idea. Like when you have especially back in the day when you had all those computer wires and everything's kind of jumbled,
yes.
And it's like, oh my gosh, how am I even going to set up this computer? And so when I really like that concept, because I just had this visual every time I went to see her of her like going into my head and just being like, we just need to move this wire here and this wire there. And I was like, oh, I'm like that there's nothing wrong with, like there's nothing wrong with needing help and there's nothing wrong with just needing someone to kind of help you with the wire. And like you were saying, like those are wires there that were crossed. And then once she was able to show you that like actually your friend wouldn't be mad at you and uncross them, then it's like every time you wanted to say to a friend, like I'm not feeling well, I don't think I'll be able to make it to dinner tonight, for your own, take care of yourself. And then the friend wasn't mad. And it's like, I created all of that in my mind. And now the wires. And then the next time that comes up, you're not even afraid to tell the friend because you don't have that cross kind of thing going on. And
Exactly.
when you're dealing with a lot of mental health, that's literally what it feels like in your head. It's like all these wires and you can't even like get the thought through because they're all tied up together. But if you can find a way to like separate them, then it's like I finally for the first time in my life heard like silence. And I'm like, this is the most beautiful noise of not hearing myself overthink and analyze and just like that is a gift I think everybody should have. Because if you can find a way to get that, like you can actually start to create and have your life rather than like waking up the same day feeling like you're going through the motions, existing kind of thing. So
that's such a great point. So let's get into the end here. So tell us, you've mentioned this book. Tell us a little bit more and where we can get our hands on it.
Absolutely. So this is my new baby, my new pride and joy. So October 10th, which is International World Mental Health Day, I decided to release it. I picked that day because I like the idea of 10-10. And then I found out that. And then I found out actually in angel numbers that that's a day that's very much dedicated to personal growth. It's very symbolic. So, and that was without me even realizing it. There was sometimes things that line up there, but it's called Conquering the Undertow. And it took me a long time to find that title because I really wanted to have people, when they heard the title, feel what it's like when you're struggling with something. And it literally feels like there's this undertow that you're trying to keep your head above and you really want to get to shore and you really want to do it, but there's just so much in your way of getting there. But the subtitle is learning to breathe again, because breathing is something a lot of times we take for granted. But when you're feeling that way, it literally takes effort to be able to learn to breathe in a way that you're not having it as a constant thought of just trying to get through that. But what I really enjoy about the book, with a lot of feedback and beta readers and amazing community that's helped me along the way, is it's kind of, I have it as a self-help book, but it's kind of like a combination between that and a memoir, because I talk about something that happened in my life. And then I say, what coping skill, if I had back then, would have made a difference. And again, not know what was wrong with me. Why didn't I know this back then? But like, if someone else is dealing with that now, or if I was living that experience all over again, what would I do, differently? And each chapter at the end, it has a little transformational tip. And a lot of my friends now are, moms are busy with work, and they are really liking the fact that it's an easy way to end a chapter. It's maybe 3 or 4, 5 pages each chapter, and then you're able to put it down and go back into your life, apply that tip, whatever that is, keep that in your back of your head of like, oh, that's something that I can easily do. That sounds like something I haven't thought about before. Go back into your life, kind of same thing like with therapy, that you go into it and then you have a session in between to think about those, kind of things before. And then by the end of the chapter, you really understand everything I went through in my journey. And what I have just has been holding so much to heart is every single person has found something that they can relate to. Maybe it was being bullied, maybe it was not feeling like part of their family, whatever it is. At least one chapter, people come to me and they're like, wow, I really felt like that was you, that was me that you were talking about. What I really tried to do differently is, instead of talking to them like a therapist or things like that, was to talk about as if I was a friend, like how we are on the couch right now. Like a lot of things that I shared, the tips and the coping skills, that's pretty much in there, but it's written in a way that you don't feel like someone's talking down to you or judging you. I really want, my mission is for people to really feel seen and understood and feel like someone else out there understands their journey and that they're not alone, whatever they're dealing with. So I really put like everything, no shame. I was wondering at first, I'm like, well, what if, bless you. I was like, what if my mom reads this? What if my old boss reads this? And I was just like, you know what? I'm not writing it for them. I'm writing it for me 10 years ago, for what I wish I would have felt back then, that when I was like, 25, and I felt like none of my friends could understand. I think that's the hard thing, that, whatever it is, if you lose, a parent young, or if you're struggling, you're like, no one else can understand what I'm going through. It's just me. So the point of the book is for other people to feel that way, but also to feel empowered from that experience as well, of here are simple things I can do that might affect, my life. And it really takes through from me being, graduating college with honors, not being able to find a job, feeling awful about myself because I was supposed to be this person that had it all together, all the way up until, really being able to recreate my life and waking up with a purpose every day and feeling like there was a reason that I was here, and be able to really go after my passions instead of feeling like I was stuck, feeling like I could get myself unstuck, anytime. So I really feel that something in there will resonate with somebody, even if it's just one page or one chapter. I have a lot of fun song lyrics. I had a good time with that, trying to find a way. I said, who knew when I was an English major in college that I'd be doing a book that would quote Pitbull? I don't know, but there's a quote that he said in that song, that I just want to feel this moment. And that like song, for years I used to sing that because I literally just wanted to feel the moment. I wanted so hard to be present and be able to feel the moment. And then when I was writing the book, the quote came back in my head too. And I said, I never thought of all people I'd be quoting in a book would be him. But
that's hilarious.
And that's the amazing thing about music. You never know what speaks to you. But it is available right now on Amazon, both Kindle and paperback as well. And then on my website, SuzanneRenee.com as well. People can always reach out to me or contact me. I do once in a while like signed copies and stuff like that, because for some people that really makes a big difference for them to have something directly to them. So
yeah, that is wonderful. So remember, everybody, get that on Amazon. Say the title one more time.
Sure, Conquering the Undertow. It's funny though how many people are like, what's the undertow? And I was like, oh, I guess it's the word, I just take it for granted.
No, I got it, but maybe I just take it for granted too. And so where can people follow you?
Yes, absolutely. So both Instagram and Facebook, it's Suzanne Renee author. So Suzanne with 2 N's and Renee with 2 E's. And I really, every day I try to post something that will open something up for somebody or give them some inspiration.
That is wonderful. And we will have those links down in the description below, so everyone can very, very easily follow you, get a hold of your book, and just stay up to date with all of the things all of the greatness that will come from you.
Absolutely. Well, I very appreciate you having me on. I think this is what makes the difference from years ago, is having platforms like this that people can, that they don't have to necessarily participate in, but they can just listen to and feel that they're part of something bigger than themselves. I think that's the thing, is feeling that that's something bigger than just your existence and you, that other people out there also are connected and they understand where you're coming from. And I'm definitely going to follow you and tune in, because I have enjoyed this conversation. I think it can open up things. I mean, that's what I love, is that we're never done growing. It's never like I always say, you never say, oh, I'm fit enough, I never have to go to the gym anymore. But when it comes to mental health, people sometimes they're like, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, my life is great now. And I actually feel like when your life is working is actually even a bigger time to stay on that right track, to stay connected to programs such as this, so that you don't forget where you came from. It's very easy to forget what you dealt with, and then it's like, wait a minute, that's why I am where I am today, because of everything that I experienced or I conquered.
Exactly. And now that you've conquered it, you have to embrace yourself. I threw in my title. Embracing me is my title in my book.
I like it.
So again, thank you so much, everybody. Check out the links down in the description below, and let's give Renee some love on her social media platform. So again, big thank you to Suzanne for sharing. She was very open, which is what we want on this show. It's all about being open and honest. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button here at the channel so you can stay up to date with all of the amazing episodes. Remember, we drop episodes every Monday and Thursday. As well, we have a merch store. 10% of the proceeds go back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. And I mean, it makes great Christmas presents. Just saying. Or whatever holiday you celebrate, Kwanzaa and Hanukkah and whatever else. Or if you don't celebrate, they're just nice to have. And so remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.